ESG proxy voting is the practice of using shareholder votes to influence the environmental, social and governance policies and practices of companies. ESG proxy voting can have a significant impact on the performance and reputation of companies, as well as on the alignment of their interests with those of their investors and stakeholders. But how can you evaluate the ESG proxy voting policies and practices of different asset managers and funds? How can you tell if they are voting based on the best interests of investors or for political agendas? How can you compare their voting records and outcomes across different ESG issues and sectors? One source that can help you answer these questions is the ESG Proxy Vote Ranking, a new tool developed by the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. The ESG Proxy Vote Ranking analyzes the proxy voting records of 25 major asset managers and funds on 20 key ESG shareholder proposals. In the ranking assigns a score to each asset manager and fund based on how often they voted for or against these proposals, and how these votes affected the financial performance and ESG ratings of the companies involved. The ESG Proxy Vote Ranking reveals some surprising findings. For example, it shows that some asset managers and funds that claim to be committed to ESG investing actually voted against many ESG proposals that would have improved the financial and ESG performance of companies. It also shows that some asset managers and funds that do not market themselves as ESG-focused actually voted for many ESG proposals that would have benefited investors and stakeholders. The ESG Proxy Vote Ranking also provides insights into the motivations and strategies behind different proxy voting approaches. For example, it shows that some asset managers and funds tend to follow the recommendations of proxy advisory firms like Glass Lewis and ISS, which often have a biased or inconsistent view on ESG issues. It also shows that some asset managers and funds tend to vote along ideological lines, supporting proposals that advance a leftist political agenda rather than a sound investment strategy. The ESG Proxy Vote Ranking is a valuable resource for investors who want to make informed decisions about their investments based on ESG factors. By using this tool, you can assess the ESG proxy voting policies and practices of different asset managers and funds, and choose the ones that best align with your values and goals. You can also use this tool to hold asset managers and funds accountable for their proxy voting decisions, and urge them to vote in the best interests of investors and stakeholders. ESG proxy voting can make or break your investment strategy. By using sources like the ESG Proxy Vote Ranking, you can ensure that your investments are not only profitable, but also responsible. ESG proxy voting is the practice of using your voting rights as a shareholder to influence the environmental, social and governance policies of a company. It is a way of expressing your views on how a company should operate and what impact it should have on society and the planet. But how can you engage with asset managers and funds to advocate for more consistent and transparent ESG proxy voting? And what are some of the challenges and opportunities in doing so? One way to engage is to choose funds that align with your ESG preferences and goals. You can look for funds that have clear ESG policies and criteria, and that disclose how they vote on ESG issues. You can also compare the voting records of different funds on websites like Proxy Insight or Morningstar. Another way to engage is to communicate directly with asset managers and funds. You can ask them about their ESG proxy voting process, their rationale for voting for or against certain resolutions, and their engagement with companies on ESG matters. You can also express your opinions and expectations on ESG issues, and encourage them to vote in favor of ESG proposals that you support. However, engaging with asset managers and funds on ESG proxy voting is not without challenges. Some of the challenges are: lack of standardization. There is no universal definition or framework for ESG investing or proxy voting. Different asset managers and funds may have different approaches, methodologies, and priorities when it comes to ESG issues. This can make it hard to compare and evaluate their performance and impact. Lack of transparency. Some asset managers and funds may not disclose enough information about their ESG proxy voting practices, such as how they decide to vote, what factors they consider, and what outcomes they achieve. This can make it hard to hold them accountable and to assess their alignment with your ESG values. Lack of influence. As an individual investor, you may have limited power to sway the decisions of asset managers and funds, especially if they manage large pools of capital or have conflicting interests with other stakeholders. You may also face resistance or pushback from asset managers and funds that do not share your ESG views or that prioritize other objectives over ESG issues. Despite these challenges, engaging with asset managers and funds on ESG proxy voting also presents opportunities. Some of the opportunities are: enhancing returns. Research has shown that ESG proxy voting can have a positive impact on financial performance, both for companies and for investors. By voting for ESG proposals that improve corporate governance, social responsibility, and environmental sustainability, you can help create long-term value for yourself and for society. Driving change. By engaging with asset managers and funds on ESG proxy voting, you can help shape the corporate agenda and influence the behavior of companies. You can also raise awareness and demand for ESG issues among other investors, regulators, and policymakers. Aligning values. By choosing funds that reflect your ESG preferences and goals, and by communicating your views on ESG issues to asset managers and funds, you can align your investments with your values. You can also express your support for causes that matter to you, such as climate action, human rights, or diversity. In conclusion, engaging with asset managers and funds on ESG proxy voting is a way of using your voice as an investor to make a difference in the world. It is not always easy or straightforward, but it can be rewarding and impactful.